Imagine a leader who faces walled cities, giants, and a people used to wandering without direction, armed only with faith and conviction. Sounds almost impossible, doesn't it? Yet Joshua, a young man raised in the desert, turned the promise of a prosperous land into reality for Israel. How did he do it? With intricate military strategies? No. With the divine determination that moves mountains and even makes the sun stand still in the sky. It's easy to think that challenges like Joshua's are things of the past. But are they really? How many times have you found yourself stuck in front of a wall that seems unbreakable, or maybe following a path without knowing where it leads, without that certainty that a promised land is waiting for you? Joshua's journey is a guide to applied faith, a blueprint on how conviction in a higher purpose can break down barriers and conquer what seemed unreachable. Get ready for a story that will challenge what you think about limits, faith, and leadership. Discover how Joshua turned a distant promise into concrete victories, and be inspired to transform your own journey. And at the end of this powerful story, let's come together in a special prayer, asking for strength and faith to face our own challenges and conquer the promises that God has for each of us. Want to know how you can apply this transformative power in your life today? Let's walk together on this path of faith, miracles, and divine victory. Joshua, the son of Nun and from the tribe of Ephraim, showed exceptional strength and courage from a young age. He wasn't just any warrior. His determined and loyal spirit set him apart from the rest. Imagine someone who, after years of uncertainty in the desert, never lost faith. For 40 years by Moses' side, Joshua learned the true meaning of leadership, carefully observing his mentor's decisions and faith. He became not only Moses' right-hand man, but his trusted confidant, absorbing every lesson like a sponge. On this journey alongside Moses, Joshua not only honed his combat skills, but also strengthened his trust in God. When the people of Israel felt lost, Joshua was there, always with a word of faith and hope. His role was vital, especially during moments of discouragement, when the people needed a figure who wouldn't be shaken by challenges. Picture him as someone who, even under pressure, could see beyond difficulties and envision the divine promise awaiting Israel. There came a point when Moses entrusted Joshua with a special mission. He would be one of the 12 spies sent to Canaan. It was a massive responsibility. This was a land that promised abundance, but also presented daunting challenges. While other spies returned terrified, speaking of giants and fortified cities, Joshua, along with Caleb, remained steadfast. They believed wholeheartedly that faith in God was enough to overcome any obstacle. Their courage wasn't just admirable, it was inspiring. This unwavering confidence didn't go unnoticed. Step by step, Joshua was shaping into someone who wasn't guided by appearances, but by a deep conviction that the promised land was real and within reach. He was the kind of person who made you want to follow him because his confidence radiated and inspired those around him. This is a powerful example of how true faith and a sense of purpose can move even the most skeptical. Joshua led not only with words, but with actions that inspired. For anyone facing similar dilemmas, Joshua's lesson is this: to prepare and stay firm in purpose, even if the path is as tough and long as the desert. There beside Moses, Joshua was building the foundation of an unshakable leadership, waiting for the moment when he would take the reins and lead the people of Israel toward their destiny. When Moses sent the 12 spies to Canaan, it was clear this wouldn't be a simple mission. The land God had promised to the people of Israel was indeed fertile and full of abundance, but it also held monumental challenges. The spies saw giants, fortified cities, and a people who seemed invincible. When they returned, many were filled with fear, reporting only the difficulties. Yet Joshua and Caleb saw something the others missed: the assurance of victory that comes from trusting in God. Joshua didn't let the sight of giants and walls obscure his faith. Instead, he stayed firm, reminding the people that God's promise would not fail. Imagine hearing someone like Joshua, who, with a steady and encouraging voice, declares that there is no obstacle greater than faith. He knew that Canaan was a land destined for them, and he did not hesitate to encourage the people to move forward. Joshua was the kind of leader who, even in the face of the impossible, remained optimistic, strengthening those around him. Unlike the other spies, who could only see the threats, Joshua focused on the promise. He and Caleb urged the people not to fear because they knew that God was with them. This moment in Canaan was decisive in showing the people who truly trusted in the Lord. Joshua understood that true strength did not come from weapons or numbers, but from an unshakable confidence in God. He knew that with this confidence, any challenge could be overcome. Joshua's account of Canaan was more than just a testament to courage. It was a lesson in seeing beyond apparent difficulties. How many times in life do we face giants that seem insurmountable? Like Joshua, we need a clear vision of our goal without allowing fear to paralyze us. He teaches us that in the face of challenges, it is our faith and trust in God that will give us the strength to move forward. This spirit of perseverance and courage made the people see Joshua differently. He wasn't just another spy. He was a born leader who wasn't swayed by difficulties. Thus, Canaan wasn't just a land to be conquered. It became a symbol of victory for those who fully trusted in divine providence. When Moses realized that his mission was coming to an end, he knew he needed someone up to the task to lead Israel. The choice was clear. Joshua, that young man from the tribe of Ephraim, who over the years had shown not only courage, but also unwavering faith. God instructed Moses to appoint him publicly, strengthening the people's trust in this new leader. And so before the entire community, Moses passed on to Joshua the responsibility of leading the people toward the promised land. It was the beginning of a new era for Israel. Moses didn't just appoint Joshua, he encouraged him with words of great significance. Be strong and courageous. Deuteronomy chapter 31, verses 7 and 8. These words weren't mere advice. They were a promise that God would be with Joshua every step of the way. Imagine the responsibility and weight of these words. Moses had been an unshakable leader, guiding the people through crises and miracles, and now Joshua inherited this mission. Every word Moses spoke reinforced the people's faith and the certainty that Joshua was the chosen one. This transition wasn't just from one leader to another. It was a moment when the people's trust in God was renewed. They saw in Joshua the continuity of divine leadership, a figure who would follow the commandments and guide Israel with the same faith as Moses. For the people, this transfer was a reminder that as long as they remained faithful, God would bless and guide them, regardless of who was in charge. It was as if the faith that sustained Moses now flowed through Joshua, giving the people new hope. Joshua's example teaches us that leadership is more than authority. It's a matter of trust and commitment to a divine purpose. He wasn't just someone to fill Moses' place. He had been shaped by God for this task. For those seeking leadership in their lives, it's a lesson in the importance of preparation, humility, and trust. Like Joshua, we must be ready to take on greater responsibilities, knowing that God's support is what strengthens us. Joshua's appointment was an inspiring moment and a significant step for Israel. He didn't just inherit Moses' position, but the responsibility to lead the people to the end of their journey. With this new leadership, Israel was prepared for the challenges to come, knowing that Joshua, with the faith and strength he had inherited from Moses, would guide them through everything that lay ahead. Under Joshua's leadership, the people of Israel prepared for one of the most monumental moments of their journey, crossing the Jordan River. This event represented more than just a physical crossing. It was their definitive entry into the Promised Land, the beginning of a new era. Following God's instructions, Joshua instructed the people to purify themselves and prepare spiritually. He knew that to conquer Canaan, they needed faith and hearts aligned with God. This act of purification was a reminder that God was Israel's true leader and protector. When the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant touched the waters of the Jordan, an extraordinary miracle occurred. The waters parted, forming a dry path for the people to pass through safely. It's impossible to imagine the impact of this on the people. Those who had heard the stories of the Red Sea were now witnessing their own miracle. Joshua was showing that God's presence was with him, just as it had been with Moses. This moment not only reaffirmed his leadership, but also strengthened Israel's faith. This miracle was much more than an isolated event. It symbolized Joshua's unshakable trust in God and showed the people that nothing was impossible for those who believed. Just as God had opened the Red Sea, he now opened the Jordan, as proof that his promise was coming to fulfillment. For those seeking guidance and security in life, this episode teaches that trusting in God is always the first step to achieving our goals. It's as if God was telling each one, "Believe, and I will make a way." Joshua then ordered each tribe to choose a stone from the riverbed to build a memorial at Gilgal, a lasting marker for future generations to remember this divine act. This monument represented God's faithfulness and was a way to teach the people to value what he had done for them. After all, how often do we forget the victories we've received? This memorial at Gilgal was a reminder that God was with Israel. Crossing the Jordan prepared Israel for the challenges in Canaan, reinforcing the unity and faith of the people in their new leader. With renewed confidence and strengthened by the miracle, Joshua knew that the battle for the Promised Land wouldn't be easy, but he was ready. The people also felt secure, knowing that God and their new leader, Joshua, would guide them with faith and determination through the challenges ahead. The conquest of Jericho was undoubtedly one of the most iconic moments of Joshua's leadership. God instructed Joshua to use a completely unconventional strategy to bring down the city's fortifications. For 6 days, the Israelite army would march silently around Jericho's walls, accompanied by priests blowing ram's horns. It was a strategy that defied any military logic, but Joshua and the people followed it to the letter. They knew that when God is in command, even the most unusual methods can become instruments of victory. Imagine the impact of this silent march on the inhabitants of Jericho. Seeing those determined people marching with discipline and faith while the priests sounded the trumpets must have struck deep fear in the hearts of the Canaanites. With each passing day, the anticipation grew among the Israelites and also among Jericho's people, who expected a conventional attack but received an unsettling silence. This approach reinforced the message that victory would come from God's power, not from weapons. On the 7th day, Joshua ordered the people to march around the city 7 times. When they completed the 7th round, everyone shouted with all their might, and the city's seemingly unbreakable walls came tumbling down. This sudden fall was a clear sign that God was working alongside Israel. Joshua didn't just witness it, he led the people in a conquest that would forever be marked as a symbol of obedience and faith. Jericho's victory showed the people that true strength lies not in the sword, but in obedience to God. For those facing walls in life, Jericho's conquest is a powerful reminder that sometimes God's methods don't make sense to human eyes, yet they bring results we could never imagine. Whether facing financial, emotional, or spiritual challenges, God asks us to trust in Him, even when the plan seems strange. Just as Joshua obeyed with faithfulness, we are called to follow divine instructions, certain that He knows the best path. After this overwhelming victory, the people were strengthened and filled with confidence, ready to face the next challenges. Joshua's standing as a leader grew even more in Israel's eyes, and the conquest of Jericho was just the beginning. Now, with the first victory in Canaan, Israel had even more reason to believe that God would continue breaking down barriers in their path. The defeat at Ai was a devastating surprise for the people of Israel, who, after the great victory at Jericho, expected to continue winning easily. However, there was something hidden that Joshua was unaware of. Achan, one of the Israelites, had taken forbidden items from Jericho, disobeying God's instructions. This act brought severe consequences, as God withdrew his protection from Israel's army. In their first attempt to conquer Ai, the Israelites were defeated, losing 36 men and fleeing in fear. This painful experience showed that obedience to God was essential for Israel's success. Facing this defeat, Joshua was devastated and sought God, asking why he had allowed such humiliation. The answer came quickly and clearly: Israel had sinned. This episode teaches a lesson about collective responsibility and the importance of each individual's integrity within a group. In a community, one person's error can affect everyone. For those who lead groups or teams, it's a warning about the need for discipline and constant vigilance. Joshua understood that before any victory, it was necessary to purify the people and remove all disobedience. Joshua then followed divine instructions to find the guilty party. Achan was identified, confessed his sin, and to restore divine blessing, he and his family were punished. This action may seem severe, but it was a symbol of how seriously God takes holiness and obedience. Israel needed to understand that victory over the Canaanites depended not just on military strength, but on a sacred covenant. So, to move forward, it was essential that every Israelite was committed to divine orders and the camp's sanctity. With the purification completed, God gave Joshua new instructions to attack Ai, this time ensuring victory. The Israelite army, now purified, advanced on the city again, employing a careful strategy, and this time they triumphed. This episode emphasizes that spiritual and material success depends on purity of purpose and obedience to God. The lesson at Ai is a timeless reminder that there is no room for disobedience when one is on a divine mission. After this victory, Israel had learned a valuable lesson. Without God's approval, even the smallest city could defeat them. With this experience, the people became more aware of the importance of following divine instructions, ready to face upcoming challenges with clean hearts and renewed faith. After their victories and the lessons learned, Joshua decided it was time to reaffirm Israel's commitment to God. He gathered all the people at Shechem, a place of significant historical and spiritual value, where centuries earlier, Abraham had built an altar to the Lord. Choosing Shechem for this covenant renewal was meaningful, as it carried the memory of the promises made to the patriarchs. Joshua knew that the people's faith needed to be continually strengthened, and that this act of renewed commitment would keep the covenant between God and Israel alive. At Shechem, Joshua addressed the people, reminding them of all the wonders God had done for them, from their liberation from Egypt to the conquest of Canaan. He recounted how God had guided them, sustained them in the desert, and brought down the walls of Jericho. Joshua emphasized that every victory was the result of divine faithfulness, and that it was essential to remain obedient and faithful. Hearing this, the people were led to a deep reflection on their journey and recognized that their achievements depended on God's constant presence. Joshua challenged the Israelites to abandon any foreign gods and serve the Lord with integrity. He confronted them, saying, "Choose this day whom you will serve." Joshua 24:15, making it clear that there was no room for divided faith. The people responded with a firm commitment, promising to serve God with complete loyalty. This moment was more than a declaration. It was a life commitment. For many, it was a transformative decision, a change of heart and mind, a renewal of purpose that would influence the entire nation. To mark this covenant, Joshua set up a large stone as a witness of the renewal at Shechem, a visible symbol of the covenant. This stone, placed in such a symbolic location, would remind future generations of the commitment made there. When anyone passed by Shechem and saw the stone, they would remember Joshua's words and the responsibility Israel had undertaken to follow only God. This monument served as a link between the present and the future, teaching the importance of memory and gratitude. The covenant renewal at Shechem was a milestone that prepared the people for upcoming challenges. With their hearts aligned with God and their commitment reaffirmed, Israel was spiritually strengthened, ready to face the trials and blessings to come. Fulfilling God's promises to the patriarchs, Joshua began distributing the land of Canaan among the tribes of Israel. This moment was eagerly anticipated, as each tribe would finally have a place to call home after years of wandering in the desert. In Shiloh, where the tabernacle was established, Joshua organized the division of the land by casting lots, ensuring that each portion was chosen according to divine will. The structure of each tribe, with its unique characteristics, formed a new society based not on personal conquests, but on God's provision. For each tribe, this distribution was the realization of a dream and the fulfillment of God's promise. Imagine the significance of finally receiving a plot of land to cultivate, build homes, and establish a solid community. The land of Canaan transitioned from being an ideal to becoming a tangible reality. Joshua understood that this process needed to be fair, reinforcing the unity of the people and a sense of equality among the tribes, as all shared the same promised inheritance. In addition to common lands, Joshua established cities of refuge, which had a specific and essential function. These cities were designated as places of protection for those who had unintentionally taken a life. With this, Joshua created a justice system that allowed for fair trials and prevented hasty acts of revenge. For the Levites, who did not have inheritances like the other tribes, specific cities and surrounding fields were allotted where they could live and fulfill their spiritual and administrative roles in society. This act of distributing the land among the people also symbolized the new phase of stability that Israel was about to experience. No longer nomads, but inhabitants of a promised land where each tribe could grow and develop. Joshua was not just dividing territories, but laying the foundations of a prosperous and just society. This new social organization was a reflection of Israel's commitment to God, as the entire structure followed divine commandments. The land distribution marked the conclusion of a cycle, but also the beginning of new responsibilities. Each tribe, now settled, had the task of living according to God's laws and preserving peace and harmony in the promised land. Under Joshua's leadership, Israel prepared to cultivate the inheritance they had received, confident that as long as they followed divine ways, they would enjoy the promised blessings and prosperity. In a crucial battle against a coalition of Canaanite kings, Joshua and the Israelite army faced what seemed an impossible challenge. However, with courage and faith, Joshua led the people in a long night march to surprise the enemy at Gibeon. The battle was fierce, but Joshua, with absolute confidence in God, called for an extraordinary miracle. He asked that the sun and moon stand still so the Israelite army could complete their victory. This request, recorded in Joshua 10:12-13, is one of the most powerful demonstrations of faith and boldness in the Bible. Imagine the scene. In the middle of the battle, the sun stood still in the sky and the moon halted. Israel fought under continuous light, prevailing over their enemies until the victory was complete. This miracle, which halted time and defied the laws of nature, demonstrated that God was directly involved in Israel's fight, responding to Joshua's bold prayer. For the people, this sign reinforced the certainty that, with God, no obstacle was too great. The battle was not just against the Canaanites, but was proof that God was leading Israel at every step. The miracle of the sun standing still was not an isolated event. It was an eternal testament to God's power over all things. It is a reminder that, no matter how difficult a situation seems, true faith can lead to miracles. In everyday life, it teaches us not to give up in the face of struggle, but to ask confidently for divine help. Joshua shows us that trusting in God opens doors and makes the impossible happen, even when everything seems lost. For Israel, this supernatural victory solidified their dominance over southern Canaan and instilled fear among neighboring peoples. The event not only brought a military victory, but marked Israel as a nation protected and guided by God. The Canaanite kings realized they faced more than warriors. They faced a people whose faith and strength came from something much greater. Joshua had shown that in the war for the Promised Land, God's power was Israel's primary weapon. This miracle further strengthened Joshua's leadership in the eyes of the people. He had asked for the impossible, and God had answered. Thus, Israel advanced with renewed courage, confident that if God was with them, no enemy force could stand against them. With the sun halted in the sky as a witness, the people prepared for future conquests, trusting in God's power and constant presence. With the conclusion of the military campaigns and the distribution of the Promised Land among the tribes, Joshua felt that his purpose had been fulfilled. Now, at 110 years old, he knew his journey was coming to an end. In one final act of leadership, he gathered the people to give them advice and remind them of their commitment to God. In his words, he emphasized the importance of faithfulness and warned against the idolatry of neighboring nations. Joshua stressed that Israel's strength did not come from swords or strategies, but from their covenant with God, the same covenant that had guided them through the years. In this final gathering, Joshua asked the people to choose firmly whom they would serve, God or the gods of the surrounding nations. He declared with all conviction that he and his house would serve the Lord. This declaration was not just a personal choice. It was an invitation for everyone to renew their commitment to the God who had transformed Israel into a powerful nation. Joshua knew that without faithfulness, the people would be vulnerable to foreign influences and lose God's favor. To reinforce this commitment, Joshua recorded the words of the covenant in a book and set up a large stone as a witness to Israel's commitment. This stone, placed beside the sanctuary, symbolized the eternal witness of the people, reminding them of the importance of maintaining the covenant. When future generations looked at this stone, they would remember their ancestors' choice and the responsibility to live according to the commandments. This final act of Joshua showed his vision and care for Israel's spiritual future. After these words, Joshua passed away, concluding a life dedicated to serving God and his people. He was buried in his inheritance at Timnath-Serah in the hill country of Ephraim. His death marked the end of an era, but his legacy of faith and leadership continued to inspire generations. Israel had received a land and an identity, but it was now up to them to maintain their covenant with God, remembering Joshua's teachings and example. Joshua's impact extended far beyond his military conquests. He left a legacy of unwavering obedience and faith in God. His life proved that true success comes not just from victories on the battlefield, but from faithfulness and commitment to divine purpose. With his passing, the people of Israel now bore the responsibility of continuing their journey, strengthened by the teachings and example of the leader who guided them to the Promised Land. Like Joshua, we all face battles, challenges that seem insurmountable, and moments when our strength is tested. The story of Joshua teaches us that with faith and obedience, God guides and empowers us to achieve the impossible. He transformed a nomadic people into a victorious nation, leading them with courage and unwavering confidence. And that same strength is available to us in every decision and step we take toward God's promises for our lives. So I ask you, are you ready to break down your own walls? How about strengthening yourself spiritually and seeking Joshua's same boldness, facing difficulties with confidence and faith? Remember, victory doesn't come from our strength alone, but from our willingness to surrender and trust in divine direction. Ultimately, this journey of faith is what leads us to the true miracles and victories that God has already prepared. Let's come together then and say a prayer, asking for the same faith and determination that Joshua had. May God give us the strength to overcome challenges and the courage to move forward. May He open paths where we see none and grant us the wisdom to discern His plan. And if you want to learn more about this journey of faith, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss anything and will continue to grow spiritually, inspired by the examples of great biblical leaders. Lord God, we thank you for the story of Joshua, a man who followed you faithfully and trusted in your promises even when everything seemed impossible. Just as he faced walls and conquered the promised land, help us to have that same courage and determination in our lives. May our faith be strong enough to withstand challenges, and may we see, through your promises, the victories you have already set aside for us. Give us the confidence that Joshua had when leading your people, and help us follow your will at every step. May we cross our Jordan rivers and bring down the walls of Jericho that rise against us. Just as Joshua, may we have the humility to always trust in you and the courage to move forward, even in times of uncertainty. Lord, guide our steps and fill our hearts with unshakable faith. We know that with your presence we can overcome any obstacle. In Jesus' name, we ask for strength, wisdom, and courage. Amen. And if you want to continue being inspired by stories of faith and learning how to apply these teachings to your life, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Together, we will grow spiritually and face every challenge with the certainty that God is with us. How about starting this journey now?